Welcome to a new reproductive management case report with Antonio Vela, veterinarian. Antonio Vela is a resident of the European College of Porcine Health Management with more than 20 years of experience in the swine industry and who specializes in the field of swine reproduction. He has published several studies on the subject with a focus on ultrasonography and diagnostics. Today, we are going to study the importance of a proper vaccination program for the control of reproductive diseases. Let's start at the beginning with an introduction to the case.
Hello everybody, my name is Antonio Vela. I am a practitioner here in Spain, and today we are going to see a clinical case in relation with reproduction. The title of the clinical case is The Importance of a Acute Vaccination Plan. First, we are going to see some characteristics of the farm, the localization, the health status, and how is the place, and something in relation with that points. And we are going later to put the focus on the symptoms and lesions. And one of the most important for me today is to show you the method of diagnosis in this particular case, putting the focus on the analysis of the data. And later we are going to see some conclusions. The farm is in the northwest of Spain. It's a small farm with 800 productive sows in a farrowing to finish system. We are working there in weekly basis with a length of lactation of 28 days. So we have 28 bases in the farm. We are working with a cell replacement, and the genetic is a commercial genetic Landra's large and a German petrine. The health status in the gills and sows are negative for pairs, positive for Mycoplasma pneumoniae, negative for rhinitis and for Brachyspira, and we are positive for scabies. We are negative too for Augeski. And as you can see here on the slide, you can I show you the test that we are using to control that diseases in the farm. The vaccination protocol in the gills, we vaccinate against Ehrlichia pylori and parvovirus with an inactive vaccine around 16 or between 16 and 18 weeks of age. We are using a PCV2 at 20 weeks of age, and at the same time we vaccinate against Mycoplasma pneumoniae too. And the sows, we are vaccinated against coli and Clostridium. We are using a couple of doses with 75 days and with 90 days of gestation. And during the lactation, in around day 10 after farrowing, we are using Ehrlichia pylori and parvovirus. So as you can see, it's a very, very simple vaccination protocol. In the piglets, more or less the same, very simple, Mycoplasma and PCV2 just at the moment of the weaning. In November of 2017, we in the farm changed the protocol for the vaccination of Ehrlichia pylori and parvovirus. If you remember, we are vaccinated around 10 days after farrowing, and the farm changed and began to vaccinate in mass vaccinations once a year. But the sows with less of 7 weeks of gestation were vaccinated later to not compromise the gestation. 8 months later, we began to see the first symptoms. We have 5 abortions, but one of the characteristics of this abortion is that in 3 of them we can see fever. That point is very, very important for analyze the abortion in a farm. So the first question that you have to do to the farmer or to yourself is if the sow has or not symptoms, because depending on that, we we will have some differential diagnosis or another one. Depending on that, we have to take some samples or another ones. We are going to see this later. As you can see, the situation with respect to ratings up to this moment is very good, or more or less normal. In this picture, you can see the analyze, or how I prefer to analyze the ratings in a farm. In not many situations, I analyze the total. I prefer split the population at least in 4 groups that I consider that they are very, very different in terms of reproduction. As you can see, the first group correspond with the gills, and the second group is the weaned sows with 2 groups inside, the permiparous, because permiparous is the animals who is going to suffer more during the lactation period, multiparous, and all the sows who has problem in the past with the inseminations, abortions, or rebreedings again. In the columns, you can see first the first 4 rows. You can see the number of matings, total returns, and the total returns I split in 2: returns and farrowing, and returns and cooling. Because of most of the cases with programs, you only see the returns and farrowing. So in that cases, the ratings must be subestimated. Later, I see the different types of ratings split in 5 different groups: early returns, total irregular returns, late returns, and not in peak or not gestating. The most important for me are the total returns and total irregular returns. In that case, and as you can see here in that picture, the normal relations between them has to be around 3 to 1, 3 regular returns to 1 irregular returns. Most of the cases we thought that the irregular returns are in relation with the pitfalls in the inseminations, but not always happen that. At the end of the day, the regular returns are when you lose the gestation during the first 2 weeks of gestations, and irregular returns comes when you lose the gestation the second 2 weeks of gestation, so the week 3 and week 4. Inside of these both groups, you can find regular returns from 18 to 24 days. That this is the best situations in the case that you have a return, or late regular returns. That is when you take the second cycle, and the most of the cases here is that the people has problems with the detection of the returns. The regular returns are again split in a couple of groups, 24 to 30 days. Most of the cases in relation with nutrition and with the body condition, and irregular returns or late irregular returns in that case could be more related with infections or something like that. Late returns and no gestating returns are a couple of returns that are not very usual in the farm, and most of the cases is due to problems with the heat detection, or with a bad sonography diagnosis. Following with that analysis, is very, very important that we change these absolute numbers to percentage. This is a way to understand better what is happening. And again, as you can see here, the total returns are more or less normal, just on the limit could be. We have now 10% of total returns, but up to this moment, only 3% of these are return and calling. So this is the meaning. The meaning of that is that with high probability, that returns are not due to an infection, is more in relation with managed. And as I said before, the relation between regular and irregular are more or less 3-1, more or less. So the results are more or less good in general terms in that case. Very, very important to understand better what is going to happen with the figures, and important to explain to the farmer what is happening is use graph. As you can see here, only you need a few seconds to understand what is going to happen in that moment in the farm. So again, more or less a situation to this moment normal with respect to rebreedings, and with this 10% of rebreedings are more or less normal. Only if you see we have a 5% of empty or not in peak sows, that this is a very, very high number. The target in that point is around 2.5 or 1%, no more than that. And in most of the cases, this is in relation with loss of gestation during the gestation due to abortions that the people don't see properly. So in that point, is very, very important to control every couple of weeks at least all of the sows, and to check with sonography if you have some doubts about the gestation or not of a particular sow. Some weeks after the first abortion, we began to analyze the returns, and we observed that the returns were increased in 6%. It's not too much, but it's not this the most important. The most important is that 6% of the sows who had a rebreeding were sent to the slaughtery because they didn't recover the healthy. This is the first point, and the second point is that the relation between regular and irregular rebreedings changed completely, and we began to have more irregular rebreedings, as you can see here in this graph. The pictures is a reference to some early abortions that we began to see around day 25 or between 25 or 30 days of gestation. So we began to have more irregular rebreedings in the day 31 to 37, as you can see here again in the graph. One point that is important to put the focus is the ratios. As you can see here in the healthy situation before the clinical case, the ratios are completely normal. I use work with these three ratios: is regular, rebreedings later in comparison with the total regular ratings. Is that ratio only measure if you are doing the things well with the board, or if you are or if you have losing pregnancies around the day 13, 35. Total irregular rebrandings in comparison with the total rebrandings, and irregular rebrandings too in comparison with total irregular rebrandings. But as I said before the clinical case, all these ratios are completely normal, and the situations change after the clinical situations, and all the regions began to be worst, as you can see here in that image. We had a 62% of regular later rebrandings. The limit was less than 10%. Irregular rebrandings, as I said before, change in comparison with the relation between irregular and regular rebrandings, and we are in 32%, and irregular rebrandings too in comparison with the total irregular rebrandings increase the ratio. So all of these data indicate that we have an infection problem, and this infection problem is the cause of the rebrandings. Other symptoms that we see in the farm was the increase of metritis, and as you can see here in that picture. And when you have an increase of metritis, you begin to see pseudogestations. The pseudogestation is when a sow, due to the volume of the uterus increase a lot, the corporal lutea are always present on the ovary, and then you never have a follicular phase. I am going to show you a video. First, I want to explain you. The ovary is going to appear here on the right of the image. Here we can see 3 different corporal lutea, but we are going to see more. And here is the ovary with a very big volume, with a very big section of the horn of the uterus, and very, very edematosis and hyperechogenic, as you can see there, for instance. This is the typical sign of metritis. Other thing that we began to see is fetal death. This is something very clear to diagnosis by sonography, but in that case, first we are going to see how is the normal situation. In the video, we are going to see a live fetus, a live piglet. We are going to see how the piglet is moving, the heart is beating, and we are going to see an echogenic whole black circle just in the middle, that is the stomach. All of these symptoms are telling us that the animal is alive. You can see here again the heart beating, the animal is moving always, and here the black hole, that is the stomach with fluid inside. Most of the cases we began to see fetal death inside, and quickly we can observe mummifies, and at the end of the process, this mass of material inside of the uterus we can see again like this. All of these white points and white lines are the rest of materials of the dead fetus. So obviously that sound is impossible to recover the normal situation, and most of them were sent to the slaughter, and this is the reason due to we increase the rebrandings and the slaughter. And again, with that symptoms, we confirm that this reproduction problem is due to infection and not due to a manage. Other symptoms that we saw were stillbirth piglets and with litters. And the farmer told us that they are seeing in many cases skin burns, especially during the lactation, and they are treated these cases with penicillin with a very good answer and corticoids, and here we have a picture of the details. As you are seeing in the image, that spots are located at back, neck, and flank. They had a diamond shape, bake age. There is no alteration on the external part of the epidermis, no ipsins or vesicles, and always in all the cases the sows had fever.
We would like to end the first part of the case with a few questions for you to reflect upon before we move on to the second part, which consists of the resolution and the conclusions drawn from it. The questions are as follows. 1. What should the differential diagnosis be? Why? 2. What samples should be taken? 3. What tests should be carried out? 4. What short-term actions should be taken? 5. What about in the long term? We encourage you to think about and answer these questions before moving on to the second part of the case. If interested, you can send your answers and any questions you may have to your local IPRA representative.